The fractured echo loomed ahead, its hull torn open like a carcass floating in the dark. Crimson veins glowed faintly across its surface, pulsing in uneven rhythm. The swarm of drones had dissolved under Lyra's resonance, but the wreck itself moved with unsettling intent. Slow, deliberate, alive. Rourke gripped the controls. "Tell me that thing's just drifting." The ship answered in a voice barely above a whisper. "No drift. It remembers. It hungers." Lyra's breath hitched. The crystal in her hand pulsed, matching the broken rhythm of the wreck, and beneath the hum of corruption, she heard it again, her name. Lyra. The voice was faint, strangled, as though dragged from the depths of drowning water. She stepped toward the projection, heart pounding. "Someone's in there." Rourke shot her a sharp look. "It's a wreck full of corruption. Nobody's alive in that thing." But she shook her head. "Not alive. Anchored. Trapped." The wreck shuddered violently, and crimson light speared outward. Rourke cursed, yanking their vessel into a dive as molten fragments of energy tore across the void. "That's a funny way of asking for help," he snapped. The Echo ship they rode answered with arcs of violet crescents, slicing through the attack. Yet every wound carved into the wreck only bled more crimson light, as if feeding it. Lyra pressed the crystal harder against the dice, closing her eyes. "If there's someone inside, I have to reach them." Her consciousness stretched outward, drawn into the pulse of the wreck. She was no longer standing in the chamber, she was drifting through broken corridors, walls torn apart by silence. Memories bled from every surface, children laughing, cities of glass and flame, oceans boiling away, worlds dying, yet screaming to be remembered. And at the heart of it, an anchor, a woman chained in light, her face gaunt but eyes burning with desperate fire. She looked at Lyra with recognition, though they had never met. "You're late," the woman whispered, voice echoing through the wreck. "The silence takes everything, and it has taken me." Lyra reached toward her. "I can free you." The woman shook her head, crimson light creeping across her skin. "No, you can only end me." The vision shattered. Lyra's eyes flew open as the wreck howled, crimson tendrils lashing outward, ensnaring their ship. Rourke fought the controls, sweat dripping down his brow. "We're caught. Kale, whatever you're doing, stop it or finish it, because this thing's about to crush us like a tin can." The wreck's voice split the void, overlapping the woman's last words. "End me." The crystal in Lyra's hand flared violently, demanding an answer. She realized in that instant what the anchors of old had meant. To preserve memory, sometimes it had to be severed from corruption. Mercy, not cruelty. Her voice trembled, but she raised the crystal high. "Then let me carry what you cannot." Light erupted from the black ship, not as a weapon, but as a resonance, a mourning song of violet energy. It cut through the tendrils, through the wreck itself, dissolving its corrupted hull into fragments of fading light. The last whisper brushed against her mind. "Remember me." Then silence. The wreck was gone. The void stilled. Rourke slumped back in the cradle, chest heaving. "Remind me never to let you answer whispers in haunted graveyards again." But Lyra didn't answer. Tears burned her eyes, as she stared at the crystal now glowing faintly with a new pulse. Not hers, not the ship's, but the echo of the anchor she had freed. And for the first time, she wondered how many more would beg her for the same mercy. The hollow verge deepened. Their ship glided through the dark like a solitary heartbeat, its hull glowing faintly violet against a backdrop of endless black. The stars here were fractured, bent into impossible geometries, as though even light itself had been broken. Rourke muttered under his breath, eyes locked on the shifting void outside. "I've flown through minefields, storm fronts, collapsing stations. Nothing ever felt like this." Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the crystal, which pulsed with two rhythms now, her own, and the faint echo of the anchor she had freed. Each beat was heavier, as if her chest carried more than one life. The ship's voice whispered from the walls, quieter than before. "Memory thins. The verge feeds." And it did. At first it was subtle, small things slipping away. The hum of systems she'd memorized since boarding felt unfamiliar. A corridor that should have led to the dais bent into a dead end. Words she wanted to speak dissolved before reaching her lips. Then it grew worse. The chamber rippled, walls distorting, Shadows bled across the projections, faces appeared, her mother, her father, people she hadn't thought about in years, flickering like dying stars, then vanishing. Rourke cursed as his hands twitched on the controls. Kale, I just saw my old squad, every one of them. They've been dead for 10 years. Lara's pulse raced. The Verge isn't just feeding on the echoes, it's feeding on us. The ship trembled violently, pulled by invisible current. Fragments of ruined echo vessels drifted past, hulks with holes punched clean through them, surfaces etched with patterns like claw marks. Some pulsed faintly with crimson, others were empty husks, their anchors long consumed. Lara pressed the crystal to her chest. Don't look at them too long. They're not just wrecks, they're lures. But even as she said it, a whisper brushed her ear. Lara. She spun, heart pounding. The voice was clear, warm, unmistakable. Her mother's. She saw her standing at the edge of the chamber, hair falling over her shoulders, just as it had on the day she'd left Earth. Smiling, eyes bright. You've gone too far, love. Come home. The crystal in her hand flared violently, and the illusion shattered like glass. Her mother was gone, leaving only darkness. Lara staggered, clutching the dice. It's not real. It's the Verge trying to strip us apart. Rourke's knuckles were white on the controls. Yeah, well, it's doing a damn good job. Suddenly the void ahead twisted open. Not a ship this time, but a rift, a jagged wound in space, bleeding crimson light. From within, tendrils of silence spilled outward, curling through the void like smoke. The ship's voice trembled. The Verge opens. The silence awakened. The rift pulsed once, and every projection in the chamber shattered. For a heartbeat, Lara and Rourke were nowhere, floating in pure black, the edges of their own memories dissolving. Lara's voice broke into the void. If we lose ourselves here, there's no coming back. The crystal flared again, violet against the crimson bleed. She clutched it tightly, forcing the resonance outward, anchoring herself and Rourke back into the chamber. The projections snapped into place, though flickering, unstable. Rourke let out a ragged breath. Remind me again why we didn't just turn back. Lara swallowed hard, her gaze locked on the bleeding rift. Because whatever's behind that is why the silence was born, and if we don't face it, no one else will. The rift widened, and something stirred within. The rift widened like a wound torn into the void. Crimson light bled outward in ragged streams, warping the stars around it. Their ship shuddered, as if resisting, but still it moved forward, drawn by a pull neither mechanical nor voluntary. Rourke's hands gripped the controls tight. Kale, tell me this is a bad idea, and we'll turn around. But Lara couldn't. The crystal pulsed in her hand, bright and insistent, tugging her forward like a compass needle locked on destiny. We need to know what's inside, the ship whispered, its tone strained. The Verge leads to the root leads to silence. And then they crossed. The moment they entered, sound died. The hum of the vessel, the beat of their hearts, even the faint crackle of energy, everything vanished. Only silence remained, crushing and absolute. The chamber dissolved into black. Lara and Rourke stood in nothingness. The ship gone, the DAS gone, even their own bodies seemed faint, translucent, like they were already being erased. Rourke's voice trembled. Kale, Kale. She reached for him. Her hand touched his, but it felt distant, unreal, as though they were already shadows. Then the voice came. Not a whisper, not static, but something vast and resonant. It filled the dark, pressing into their minds, their bones, their very memories. You are echoes, nothing more. Fragments that should not endure. Lara's throat tightened. She forced her voice out, even though the silence swallowed it instantly. Who are you? The void rippled. Shapes appeared. Figures stepping out of the dark. At first they were strangers, then they weren't. Rourke squawked. Each man and woman he'd lost in the Titan collapse. Their eyes empty, their voices hollow. You left us. He staggered back. No, no. Lara turned and froze. Her mother stood before her again, but not smiling this time. Her face was hollow, eyes black voids. You carry me, but you let me die. You always let us die. The crystal in Lara's hand dimmed, its light smothered by the crimson glow, spreading through the figures. The voice filled the void again. You cling to memory, but memory is weakness. Surrender it, and be free. The figures advanced, their forms flickering, merging into tendrils of crimson light that coiled around their limbs. Rourke struggled, fury and grief twisting his face. Cale, it's not real, it's not them. But the silence pressed harder, and for a moment, even he believed the voice. His chest ached as his squad's faces loomed close, accusing, demanding. Lyra's knees buckled. She pressed the crystal to her chest, desperate, whispering, I won't let you take them, I won't forget. The crimson tendrils tightened, suffocating, and then the crystal flared. A resonance burst outward, not strong, not violent, but steady, a heartbeat against the void. It carried fragments of memory, laughter, touch, the warmth of firelight, real moments, uncorrupted. The crimson forms shrieked and dissolved, recoiling into the dark. The voice thundered, angrier now. You cannot hold them forever. Every cycle ends, every anchor breaks. The void shuddered violently, cracks of crimson tearing through the black. For a moment, Lyra swore she saw something beyond the cracks. An endless maw, not creature but absence itself, gnawing at the edges of being. The silence itself. Rourke grabbed her arm, hauling her upright. His voice shook but burned with defiance. Then will be the first cycle that doesn't break. The void cracked wider, the maw pressing closer, and the crystal pulsed once more, answering not with fear but with challenge. The void cracked wider, and the maw behind the rift yawned like an abyss that was not empty but hungry. Crimson fractures spread in every direction, bleeding into their half-formed world. Rourke held onto Lyra's arm with both hands. Cale, we need to move. Now. But the silence pressed harder, crushing, the gravity of nothingness. Their ship was gone. The chamber was gone. Only the rift remained, pulling them deeper. The voice returned, sharper, closer. Fragments cannot defy the whole, you will dissolve. Lyra gritted her teeth, clutching the crystal against her chest. Its faint violet pulse was the only anchor she had left. She forced herself to focus on it, not the maw, not the crimson cracks, not even Rourke's panicked grip. The crystal resonated. Faint threads of light stretched outward, weaving a fragile corridor through the chaos. For a moment she could breathe again. Rourke saw it and dragged her forward. That's our way out. Don't stop, Cale. They ran. Or perhaps drifted. Time had no meaning here. Every step stretched and collapsed all at once. Figures lunged from the crimson cracks, twisted silhouettes of people they had once known. Accusations, pleas, screams, all reaching for them. Rourke snarled, swinging his arm through the figure. They shattered into dust, but every blow left his movements slower, heavier. They're trying to split us apart. Don't listen. Lyra staggered as her mother's voice cut through the void again, clearer than ever. You could have saved me. You chose not to. She faltered. The thread of light flickered. Rourke grabbed her shoulder and shook her hard. Look at me, Cale. That's not your mother. It's the silence twisting her. You know that. Tears stung her eyes, but she nodded, clutching the crystal tighter. The violet glow steadied. The maw roared. Not sound, but a tearing vibration that rattled through their bones. The corridor of light began collapsing, walls of crimson, rushing inward. Move, Rourke bellowed, shoving her ahead. The threads narrowed to a pinprick, an exit shrinking fast. Lyra threw herself forward, dragging Rourke with her. For one terrifying instant, the crimson tendrils caught his leg, pulling him back toward the maw. He shouted, struggling, Cale, go, don't let it take you. But she held on, both hands gripping his arm. The crystal flared violently, the resonance surging outward in one desperate burst. The tendrils burned away in violet fire, shrieking as they dissolved into ash. Then they were through. The chamber reformed around them. The dais, the projections, the walls of the echo. The hum of systems returned, ragged and uneven but real. Sound filled the world again. Lyra collapsed to her knees, gasping. Rourke slumped beside her, chest heaving. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Rourke let out a shaky laugh. Next time you say let's see what's inside, remind me to knock you unconscious. Lyra didn't smile. Her eyes were locked on the crystal in her hand. It pulsed faintly, but something was different. Inside its glow, a sliver of crimson shimmered, thin but undeniable. The silence hadn't just tried to erase them, it had touched them. The ship's voice broke the silence, faint and strained. The root has seen you. You are marked. Lyra's blood ran cold. The hollow verge stretched open into a vast chasm of broken star. Wreckage drifted in silent spirals, fragments of ships older than Earth itself, each twisted into grotesque shapes by corruption. At the center floated a leviathan. It was not a ship, not anymore. Its hull sprawled like the bones of a dead god, kilometers long, crowned with jagged spires of crimson light. Entire fleets could have hidden within its shadow. The ship's whisper trembled through the chamber. Anchor Prime, fallen, consumed. Rourke's breath caught. You've got to be kidding me. His fingers tightened on the controls. That thing's bigger than half the stations I've flown through. Lyra stepped forward, staring in awe and dread. The crystal pulsed violently in her hand, resonating against the Leviathan's presence. She whispered, "It's not just a ship, it's a graveyard." Thousands of voices, bound together. As if hearing her, the Leviathan stirred. Crimson light erupted across its spires, and a chorus of distorted voices filled the void. You cannot unmake what is already broken. The Leviathan moved, spines detached from its body, shifting into fleets of crimson constructs, swarming like predators. Energy rippled across its hull, a storm of annihilation ready to fire. Rourke cursed, jerking the controls. "Hold on." The ship screamed through the void, weaving between debris as beams of crimson tore past. Each shot left after images burning in their eyes. Whole fragments of wreckage vaporized in a single breath. "Kill," Rourke shouted. "If you've got another one of your resonance miracles, now's the time." Lyra pressed the crystal to the dais. The chamber lit up with violet crescents, striking outward to cut through the swarm. Each wave of resonance dissolved constructs into fading light, but for every one that fell, 3 more emerged from the Leviathan's spires. The Leviathan roared, a vibration that made the entire Echo ship shudder. The crystal flared hotter, nearly burning her hand. Memories flooded her vision, thousands of anchors crying out, trapped within the Leviathan's corrupted core. They weren't just defending it, they were begging for release. Her voice broke. "They're inside, all of them. It's not a weapon, it's a prison." The Leviathan's spires retracted, focusing energy into a single catastrophic beam. Rourke saw it coming and swore, "If that hits, we're ash." Lyra's pulse raced. She raised the crystal high, pouring everything into it: her fear, her grief, her will. The chamber vibrated violently as the resonance expanded, merging with the ship's own dying heartbeat. "Together," she cried. The ship answered, unleashing its full core resonance in a tidal wave of violet light. The Leviathan fired. Crimson met violet, void tearing apart in the clash. For a moment, there was nothing but blinding brilliance, the scream of 1,000 memories colliding. Then the Leviathan cracked. Its hull split open, spires shattering into fragments. A flood of voices erupted, no longer distorted but clear, rising in a final chorus before fading into silence. The Leviathan collapsed into dust, its vast body dissolving into fading motes of light. The swarm dissolved with it, leaving only quiet emptiness. The chamber dimmed. Smoke filled the air. Lyra fell to her knees, clutching the crystal. It pulsed faintly, carrying not one, but many new echoes. Her chest ached with their weight. Rourke leaned back, drenched in sweat. "Tell me that was the worst of it." The ship's voice whispered weakly, almost mournfully. "You have broken Anchor Prime, but the root remains. The silence is not bound to one world. It stretches across all stars." The words hit like a knife. Lyra's gaze rose to the void beyond. For the first time, she saw the verge not as a single storm, but as part of a vast network, threads of crimson stretching outward in every direction, reaching across the galaxy. Her heart sank. They hadn't ended anything. They had only opened the door wider. The hollow verge was quiet. Where the Leviathan had once hung like a crimson moon, only drifting ash remained, dust glowing faintly violet, carried away by unseen currents. The wreckage field had fallen still, no longer swarming with corrupted echoes. For the first time since entering the verge, silence felt like peace. Rourke slumped back in the pilot's cradle, his breath ragged. I can't believe we lived through that. Kel, do you have any idea what we just fought? Lyra stood at the dais, the crystal trembling faintly in her grip. Its light was swollen now, carrying 100 new pulses, each one a faint heartbeat pressing against her own. Her voice was soft, heavy, an anchor of anchors. A whole civilization's memory twisted. Rourke's jaw tightened. And we destroyed it. No. She shook her head, her eyes shimmering with tears. We freed it. They were begging. Did you hear them? He looked away, silent. For all his cynicism, he had heard them too. The Echo ship groaned as systems stabilized. Its voice was faint but clearer than before. Anchor Prime is gone. The verge collapses. But the route spreads further, across stars, across cycles. The silence waits where no light reaches. The words echoed in the chamber like a tolling bell. Rourke frowned, rubbing his temples. So we cut off one head, and the Hydra's got 1,000 more. Lyra closed her eyes. For a moment, she let the flood of new echoes wash over her. Images of oceans boiling, cities burning, children laughing before the end. It nearly broke her. But beneath the grief, a single thread pulled taut. Resolve. She opened her eyes, her voice steadier. Then we'll find the route. Wherever it spreads, we'll follow it. Rourke gave a bitter laugh. You say that like it's simple. The galaxy's big, Kel, and we barely survived this one storm. She met his gaze, crystal glowing faintly in her hand. It doesn't matter. If the silence is everywhere, then every world is at risk. If we don't fight it, no one will. The ship's projections flickered, displaying a vast lattice of crimson threads branching outward from the verge. They stretched across systems, through nebulae into black voids beyond any charted map. Each line pulsed faintly, veins of corruption crawling through the galaxy. Rourke stared at the impossible web. We're supposed to chase that, the ship whispered, almost like a prayer. You are not alone. Other anchors remain, scattered, dormant, waiting. Lyra's heart skipped. Anchors, survivors, not survivors, successors, echoes that endured the first cycle, fragments like you. Rourke gave her a sidelong look. So what? You're not the only anchor whisperer out there. Lyra's grip on the crystal tightened. The thought was terrifying, but also hopeful. If there were others like her, then maybe they could stand against the silence together. She straightened, voice firm. Then that's our next step. Find them. Before the silence does. The chamber fell quiet, the fading ash of the verge drifting outside like dying star. For the first time since stepping into the void, Lyra no longer felt like a girl lost in someone else's war. She felt like a piece of something larger, something rising. The fight wasn't over. It had only begun. The hollow verge faded behind them, shrinking into a bruise of crimson on the star map. For hours the ship drifted through silence, its wounded systems knitting themselves back together. Rourke sat slouched in the cradle, exhaustion pulling at his features. He hadn't said much since Anchor Prime's fall. His hands still trembled faintly on the controls. Lyra stood at the dais, the crystal resting against her palm. Its glow had steadied into a rhythm, layered with dozens of new pulses, each one a memory, each one a promise. The ship's voice stirred at last. The web extends, traces remain. One burns faint upon a dead world. Lyra leaned forward. Show me. The projections flared, stars shifting until a single system hovered before them. Unremarkable, a faded sun orbited by 3 barren planets, yet one glimmered faintly with a heartbeat of violet, nearly smothered by crimson threads. Rourke squinted. That's nothing. A rock. Mining colony went bust there a century ago. No one's lived there since. Then why is it calling? Lyra's voice was soft, but certain. The ship hummed. Anchor fragment. Buried. Waiting. Rourke dragged a hand down his face. Great. So we're chasing ghosts on a dead rock now. But still he set their course. Storms of dust raged across its plains, hiding the ruins of what had once been outposts. The ship descended carefully, its hull groaning in the thin atmosphere. Projections flickered around them, mapping fractured towers, collapsed tunnels, hollow husks of machine. Everything bore the mark of abandonment, and yet the silence was heavy, as if something still lingered. Lyra stepped off the ramp into the dust. The ground crunched under her boots, brittle and lifeless. The air tasted of rust and ash. The crystal in her hand throbbed once, harder than before. Rourke adjusted his rifle, eyes scanning the horizon. "I've got a bad feeling about this." They pushed deeper into the ruins, through broken corridors where wind moaned like distant voices. Faded symbols lined the walls, human, not alien, remnants of a forgotten mining venture. But beneath the human scrawls were others, etchings, not of this world, curved lines, spirals, marks that pulsed faintly with violet light. Lyra traced them with her fingers. "These aren't ours." The crystal flared in agreement. Images flashed in her mind. Workers, unearthing something buried deep in the mines. A shard, an echo older than their colony, older than Earth itself. Her breath caught. They found an anchor fragment here. The dust trembled under their feet. A low rumble echoed through the ruin. Rourke raised his rifle. "Tell me that's just the wind." It wasn't. From the shadows of the ruins, shapes crawled forth. Corrupted husks, machines twisted by crimson veins, their limbs sharp, their eyes burning with hollow light. They moved like predators, circling, silent. Lyra's grip on the crystal tightened. She could feel it calling, deeper below, beneath the ruins, an anchor still alive, still waiting. But to reach it, they would have to fight through the silence as guardians. Rourke spat a curse, chambering a charge. "Guess the ghosts don't want us digging." Lyra lifted the crystal, violet light spilling across the ruins. "Then we'll dig anyway." The husks lunged. The guardians fell one by one, violet crescents, tearing through their corrupted husks. Each collapse released a hiss of crimson ash that dissolved into the storm wind. But for every one destroyed, another seemed to crawl from the shadows. Rourke fired a last burst into the nearest husk and snarled, "We can't keep this up. Where's that damn signal coming from?" Lyra's grip tightened on the crystal. Below, she turned toward a collapsed shaft, its mouth choked with debris. The crystal pulsed harder, threads of violet light spilling outward like veins, leading down into the dark. Without waiting, she rushed forward, weaving a resonance arc that blasted the rubble apart. The way opened, a yawning descent into the heart of the mines. Rourke groaned. Of course it's underground. Why is it always underground? But still he followed. The shaft was narrow, walls lined with rusted metal struts, and faded markings from the old colony. Their boots echoed hollowly as they climbed down, the air growing colder with every step. The deeper they went, the more the human carvings gave way to something older. Spiral patterns, etched into stone, pulsing faintly with violet, like veins buried in the planet itself. Lyra whispered, awe threading her voice. The miners didn't know what they were digging into. The shaft opened into a cavern. The walls glowed faintly, veins of violet and crimson interwoven in jagged scars. And at the center, half buried in stone and dust, lay the anchor. It was broken, a crystalline core, once smooth and whole, now cracked and blackened across one side. Wires of corrupted energy pulsed through the fractures like blood. The faint figure of a woman flickered within, shifting, incomplete, her features lost in stat. The crystal in Lyra's hand shuddered violently. Rourke swore under his breath. That's it? That's what we came all this way for? But Lyra stepped forward slowly, her chest tight. No, that's someone still alive in the fragmented figure's head turned, her hollow eyes fixing on Lyra. For a moment, there was silence. Then help me. The voice was broken, static laced through every word. But it was real. Lyra fell to her knees beside the cracked anchor, reaching out. I'm here. I can free you. The woman's eyes flickered, shifting between violet and crimson. Too late. Silence has me. I am half. Rourke stayed back, weapon raised, his face grim. Kale, listen to me. That thing is already corrupted. If you wake it, you're bringing silence closer to us. Lyra's heart pounded. The woman's broken voice trembled. Not gone. Fragments remain. Carry me. She pressed the crystal to the anchor's surface. Immediately the resonance surged. Pain seared through her chest as visions flooded her mind. This woman's life, her world, her memories of sunlight and children and songs. And then her fall into silence, the corruption, gnawing piece by piece, until only half of her remained. Tears burned Lyra's eyes. I can still save her. Rourke's voice was sharp. Or you can let her go. Cale, look at it. She's begging you to end it. The anchor flickered violently, crimson and violet colliding in its core. The cavern trembled, stones cracking under the strain. Lyra screamed, forcing her will into the crystal. The resonance spread, wrapping around the anchor like chains of light. The woman's broken form met her gaze one last time. Remember me. And then the anchor shattered. Light poured outward, scattering into fragments that sank into the crystal in Lyra's hand. The cavern fell still. The corruption burned away. Lyra collapsed forward, chest heaving. Her crystal pulsed with a new rhythm, weaker than the others but steady. The last echo of a woman who had been half, now whole, only in memory. Rourke lowered his rifle slowly. His voice was rough. You didn't save her, Cale. You ended her. Lyra wiped her eyes, her voice trembling but firm. No, I carried her and I'll carry them all. The cavern's silence pressed around them. Above, faint tremors echoed. The Guardians still stirred on the surface, but deeper inside the planet, the crystal hummed again, faint but insistent. There was more here. The cavern floor still trembled beneath their boots. Dust drifted in pale streams from cracks above, stirred by the echoes of distant Guardians. But the crystal in Lyra's hand pulsed again, faint threads of violet pulling deeper into the mine. Rourke groaned. Tell me we're done. We got your half-broken anchor. We fought your machines. And I'm one bad step away from shooting the rock just to spite it. But Lyra shook her head. Her eyes were distant, fixed on the humming resonance. No, there's more. Something beneath. The ship's faint voice hissed from her wrist calm, static-laced but clear enough. Fragment was only surface. Below lies root shard. Be wary, be afraid. The warning only steeled her resolve. They descended further. The tunnels grew narrow, walls slick with veins of crimson and violet light. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. Thick, heavy, almost breathing. The walls seemed to shift faintly, contracting and expanding as though the stone itself was alive. Rourke kept his rifle raised, unease crawling into his voice. This doesn't feel like rock anymore, Lyra whispered. Because it isn't. The silence has rooted here. The tunnel opened suddenly into a chamber so vast it felt endless. And at its heart, buried into the stone like a malignant seed, pulsed the core. It was a sphere, half crystal, half flesh. Its surface webbed with veins of crimson. Tendrils spread outward into the cavern, seeping into rock, metal and forgotten machinery. They pulsed in rhythm, feeding, growing. Lyra's stomach twisted. It's alive. And then she realized she could hear it. Not words, not memories, but cries. Thousands of tiny voices, infantile, fractured. They weren't anchors. They weren't echoes. They were beginnings. Her voice trembled. It's not just feeding on memory. It's breeding new corruption. Rourke swore violently, taking a step back. That's it. We're leaving. Whatever this thing is, we can't fight it. But the core stirred. Tendrils lashed outward, snapping through the cavern, their tips glowing with crimson fire. Guardians tore themselves from the walls, clawed from living stone, their hollow eyes fixed on intruders. The core's voice rumbled, low and resonant. Fragments feed, fragments grow, silence multiplies. Lyra staggered, clutching the crystal. Images poured into her, colonies consumed, memories stripped bare, fragments planted like seeds, each one birthing new corruption. Silence wasn't just decay, it was a cycle, an infection, a reproduction. Her pulse raced. If this was one nursery, how many more spread across the galaxy? Rourke fired a burst into the nearest Guardian, its body exploding into shards. Cale, decision time. The crystal in her hand pulsed violently, its resonance nearly unbearable. Lyra knew what it wanted. She raised it high, violet crescents spilling outward, clashing against the crimson storm. But the core was vast, its tendrils endless. Every resonance wave dissolved. Only fragments, never the heart. Her breath hitched. I can't destroy it. Not alone. Rourke snarled, covering her as more guardians swarmed. Then, what the hell are we doing here? The ship's voice whispered through the calm, weak and strained. Do not destroy, sever, cut its root, or the galaxy will drown. The crystal flared in her hand, forming a resonance blade, jagged, unstable but real. Lyra's eyes burned with defiance as she stepped forward toward the pulsing core. If she couldn't end the silence, she could wound